The Roman philosopher Cicero called gratitude not only the greatest of virtues, but the parent of all virtues. In other words, I believe he was saying that from gratitude, all other virtues are born. Virtues are qualities we can possess that aren't just occasional actions, but instead are ways of being, woven into the fiber of our very being. Virtues spring from our deepest core values, and our core values are what subconsciously motivate our decisions and our behaviors. They're the paradigms from which we operate without even realizing it. Now, I would guess that most people feel grateful, at least sometimes. But to possess gratitude as a virtue may require a change in our being, a shift in our approach to life and the world. Sometimes we may encounter a loss or even a fear of a loss that might amp up our gratitude, at least temporarily. But without a sustained conscious commitment to manifesting gratitude, that's not always sustainable. I remember 16 years ago when I had a 10-pound, 9-ounce baby at home, and I thought during his birth that I might die. And when I took him to church a couple weeks later, I was obnoxious with gratitude. Some people here might actually even remember that. Not only was I grateful to be there to tell the tale, but also to have my little one, well, my little big one. That experience changed my outlook in a way that I still benefit from. Life was no longer a given. And sometimes those moments of fear inspire our deepest appreciation for the miracle of life. But we don't have to wait for those times of terror or loss to inspire our gratitude. Instead, we can use the tools that we have: spiritual practice and mindfulness, awareness of our thoughts and words to remind us to notice how we speak, what we think, and how we choose to perceive the world. It's not a one-and-done deal. It's not like I had that frightening experience during childbirth and now I'm permanently floating on a cloud of gratitude. Nope. I have to keep feeling that gratitude, feeding that gratitude, that awareness of how precious life is, even when it can be so hard. And we know that whatever we focus on grows. Like the good wolf and the bad wolf parable, they're battling inside us, and which one wins? The one we feed. In our words and our actions, our thoughts, and even our subconscious beliefs determine what will flourish. And the good news is that our good wolf's favorite snack is gratitude. And gratitude is free, and it's readily available because if you are breathing and conscious, then you have access to the practice of gratitude. Australian researcher Dr. Kerry Howells has been studying gratitude for the last 25 years, and she believes that incorporating deep gratitude into our daily lives and thinking, allowing it to change our paradigms in our approach to life requires what she has identified as the 6 pillars of gratitude. I'm giving you a laser cat's look, Scott. Gratefully. These are the 6 qualities that she identified that we can cultivate in ourselves to sustain our grateful outlook, not just as an occasional practice, but as a virtue, as a part of the fabric of who we are. She names them as relatedness, sincerity, empathy, self-regard, integrity, and humility. She starts with relatedness because she believes that our sense of connection to others, our prioritization of relationships over stuff, over our own selfish desires, is key to evolving our gratitude from a fleeting emotion to a deeply embedded practice that we can engage in every moment of our waking and even our sleeping lives. Like so many things we consider here at UU Church, valuing relatedness is actually countercultural. Have you noticed that lately? The trend is memes that say, I like dogs, not people. Or even, I hate people. It's like cool to promote that you don't need anybody else. And it implies that we're actually better than other people. Now, I'm not going to pretend I've never said those things. I definitely have moments where I say, I prefer my pet pig Maisie's company over human company. But generally speaking, the message that we don't need anybody else or that people are stupid or annoying does not support a practice of gratitude. And it comes at a cost. Reverend Ruth, my colleague and friend, who's here with us today, reminded me recently that it wasn't best practice for me to call half the voters stupid. And I appreciate her calling me back into covenant, because those types of generalizations, while they feel good at the moment, are actually a toxic way of communicating about our fellow human beings, even when made in jest. Calling people stupid is counter to gratitude. It's counter to humility and empathy. It crushes my own virtue, and it disconnects me from others. I have a relative, as many of us may, whose voting choices I vehemently disagree with, but I'm choosing to relate to that relative with the loyalty and love that I always have as a human being, as a family member, and as one of my elders. And while I will not tolerate oppressive or hateful speech or actions from him or anyone, I will stand unashamed of my choices and my commitment to standing up for people with traditionally marginalized identities, but I can still love my relative and the people I disagree with. And it hurts me when I call people stupid. Dr. Howells' research finds that valuing relationships with other people is the strongest pillar holding up our gratitude. And as UUs, we believe that we are interconnected and that we need each other. And that leads us to empathy, another of her pillars of gratitude. Empathy is a tool we use in our quest for relatedness because it allows us to move beyond the golden rule of doing unto others as we would have done unto us, treating people how we would like to be treated, to a more nuanced and culturally inclusive criteria, which is the platinum rule. Do unto others as they would have you do unto them. And that requires empathy, learning to listen, to be aware of how someone else may receive our gratitude. And this is something today we have the opportunity to practice in our Global Grief Listening Circle. Deeply listening to others allows us to build our empathy and to find that place of gratitude for each person's unique gifts and perspective. And this leads us to sincerity. Deep gratitude is sincere, and it's not transactional. We may express sometimes a surface level thank you to people in the hopes of keeping on their good side or inspiring more generosity. And that's okay, but that is not the spiritual practice that we're exploring today. When our gratitude is sincere and authentic, then it becomes meaningful to the other person. Not a self-serving act meant to make us look like a good person, but instead, sincere gratitude is meant to boost someone else. And the world needs our sincerity. The world and people need those boosts of genuine support and appreciation. Those are the food of the good wolf, and they nurture peace in this world. Dr. Howells suggests we also need integrity, being honest and true to ourselves to support a paradigm of deep gratitude. In other words, we must express our gratitude in ways that don't abdicate responsibility for our own health and happiness. We need to ask ourselves, is our gratitude freely given and received, or is it because we have a need for someone else to fulfill? Is it an expression of wholeness or manipulation? True gratitude requires integrity. Dr. Howells also found that self-regard is essential to gratitude practice. She says, self-regard helps us to express gratitude for the good points we may be able to see even in those we feel have harmed us. It takes some confidence and some self-regard to say, that person harmed me, but I still can appreciate these things about them. When I was growing up in Catholic school, I've said this before, but we called that seeing the Jesus in people. Dr. Howells rightly directs us to be discerning. While it is a deeply spiritual practice to find goodness in others, we must also remain vigilant to protecting our own sense of worth and safety. Once we are secure in our own value, then we can venture into the complex territory of being grateful for people even when they're in the wrong, even when they're making mistakes. It is a courageous act of empathy and relatedness to be willing to acknowledge someone's harmful behaviors and set boundaries, not allowing them to hurt or harm us or others, but still be gracious towards them. This practice is written about in the Torah, in the Old and New Testament of the Christian Bible, and in the Quran. It's found in Buddhist and even Wiccan wisdom. Of course, I went down a rabbit hole of looking all that up, and then I was like, okay, this is one sermon. So we'll go into those later. But for us, UUs, our second principle calls us to justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, and we can only live into that covenant if we have cultivated our own sense of self-regard. The last pillar of gratitude that Dr. Howells articulates is humility. She says, without the pillar of humility, deep gratitude would be impossible. She says to acknowledge that we have received from another and must therefore find a way of giving back in ways that are meaningful to them requires that we're first open to receive and recognize that we are indebted to so many. Where others have wronged us, it takes great humility to maintain relatedness with them through gratitude. Now, these concepts of gratitude and humility are heartwarming ideas, but you may be wondering, Reverend Jenny, where does the rubber hit the road? If we want to embody these virtues, then we have to start with noticing what a lack of deep gratitude looks like, and maybe even noticing uncomfortably if we find that in ourselves. It's usually subtle, but not always if you're calling people stupid. It's attitude, and it can look like they did that wrong. I'm not pointing at anybody specific. It can look like empty chair. They did that wrong. Why did they do that? What's wrong with them? Or it can look like, I don't need anybody else. Or it can look like they're too stupid to get it. It can look like shallow thank yous that are transactional or performative, or even excessive thank yous that come from someone who doesn't have good self-regard. So how do we start changing some of these habits in ourselves? How do we stop ourselves from feeling entitled or smarter than other voters? This month, we are thinking about the gift of transformation and wondering, how do we get from this place that we are all in? Sometimes annoyed with other people, thinking we know more than they do, unwilling to listen deeply to their perspective. How do we get from here to being transformed by these virtues that support a paradigm of humble graciousness? I believe that you all took the first step by being willing to be here today. Relatedness, relating with other people, and together imagining more gratitude. Here we question that idea that we don't need anyone else, and instead we are thankful for the opportunities we have to build relationships with each other. In our faith communities, we have the opportunity to deepen our practice of mindfulness and slowing down and holding each other to account, like Reverend Ruth does for me. Our covenants here in our faith community call us to continually recommit ourselves to being humble and sincere and relational. In community, we grow our self-regard in the reflection of our relationships with other people. How do we know who we are in a vacuum? It requires that we bounce off each other a little bit. Here we are called to learn to be empathetic people and people of integrity. I believe that culture change is possible and that it begins with our willingness to look at how our words and thoughts have power, to grow our awareness of our choice to cultivate an attitude of graciousness. I'd like to leave you today with a Zen poem that says, "If there is light in the soul, there will be beauty in the person. If there is beauty in the person, there will be harmony in the house. If there is harmony in the house, there will be order in the nation. If there is order in the nation, there will be peace in the world. Blessed be, and may it be so."